Welcome to the Daily Vibecasting. Today we are diving deep into the massive accountability void in U.S. federal finance. We're talking $5 trillion flowing untracked. We'll contrast that systemic bloat with the hyper-efficient engineering philosophies driving Tesla's manufacturing edge, plus the breakthrough tech that might restore sight and the high-alpha mindset required to build a billion-dollar company by, well, deliberately understaffing. All right, let's jump straight into the highest stakes story of the day. It's always about the money, isn't it?
It almost always is.
We are talking about the sheer mind-boggling scale of federal spending and the systemic lack of internal controls. This whole conversation was kicked off by a critique shared by @XFreeze, and it was highlighting comments from Elon Musk, the target, the U.S. Treasury's payment automation manager, or PM.
Right, PM. And it's the scale of this failure that is just, it's truly shocking. This one system processes nearly $5 trillion every single year.
$5 trillion.
To put that into perspective for you, that's about $1 billion flowing through that system every 60 minutes.
Every hour.
Every single hour. So you'd hope it would be a model of modern financial management.
But it's the exact opposite.
The exact opposite.
And the core vulnerability, the thing that makes that $5 trillion number so terrifying, is that PM allows payments to be sent without categorization codes.
Or anything, really?
Or even more astonishingly, without any description whatsoever. They are, for all intents and purposes, untraceable blank checks.
That's it. You can't track them. You can't audit them effectively after the fact.
There's accountability void.
In its purest form. I mean, if any publicly traded company ran its AP department this way,
They'd be crucified.
Immediately. You'd trigger internal investigations, SEC probes. I mean, processing payments without ledger categories or descriptions. That signals fraud. It leads to delisting. It leads to prosecution.
But in government operations.
It's just tolerated. It's the standard. And, that tolerance is the real engine of waste.
So if the government can't audit itself or won't, who does?
Well, that's where the private market senses an opportunity, right? Blood in the water.
Which brings us to this post from @AlexShe about a company called Anti-Fraud Co. This feels like a direct sort of capitalistic response to this systemic governance failure.
Precisely. That's exactly what it is. Anti-Fraud Co.'s mission is to scale what are called qui tam whistleblower lawsuits.
Right.
And they do it against corporate fraud using advanced AI forensics.
For listeners who maybe haven't heard of qui tam, what is that exactly?
So it's a provision in the False Claims Act. It essentially lets private citizens, they're called relators, sue on behalf of the government.
And they get a cut.
They get a percentage of whatever funds are recovered. So they're basically monetizing the government's lack of oversight.
And the addressable market for this kind of private watchdog it's staggering.
Oh, it's huge.
The GAO, the Government Accountability Office, estimates the U.S. government fraud market is between $233 billion and $521 billion.
Annually.
That is up to $500 billion just
Right.
waiting for recovery.
It's a massive opportunity, sure, but it also raises this really important question. Why are we outsourcing the core function of auditing the state?
Yeah. Shouldn't this be happening internally?
Of course. This company, Anti-Fraud Co., was pitched right after its founder used data mining forensics in his 2023 congressional testimony. He exposed all this administrative waste at Brown University.
So they're just applying that same model to the federal government.
They're leveraging AI to do what thousands of federal auditors should have been doing all along. It's a powerful solution, yes, but it feels like a solution that shouldn't have to exist in the first place.
That deep critique of institutional bloat, that lack of efficiency, leads us to a completely different domain.
The opposite end of the spectrum.
Exactly. From systemic waste to the business blueprint for hypergrowth and intentional scarcity. I want to talk about the principles laid out by Chamath and then a viral clip shared at Startup Archive.
Right, Chamath. He was instrumental in scaling Facebook from, 50 million to over 700 million users?
And he preached an idea that really challenges a lot of modern startup dogma.
He did. He said to prioritize core product value over forced virality. He famously told his growth teams, don't talk about it, don't touch it.
Meaning virality.
Meaning virality, yes. Focus on making the product itself indispensable.
And that focus meant zeroing in on retention metrics, things based on actual behavioral science, not just vanity metrics like signups.
And they found the magic number. The specific data point that predicted a 50% retention rate for Facebook, their key aha moment, was getting a new user to connect with 7 friends in 10 days.
7 friends in 10 days. That's so specific.
It is. It's pure data invalidating what he called gut lore.
But achieving that kind of elite performance, that focus, it requires a very specific and often painful kind of culture.
It really does. Which brings us to this high alpha management discussion that was promoted by Atlassian with Rippling's CPO, Matt MacInnis.
And MacInnis introduces an idea that, honestly, it seems totally counterintuitive to the modern corporate environment. He advocates for deliberately understaffing your teams.
On purpose. He argues that overstaffing is the silent killer of productivity. It breeds politics, diffusion of responsibility, unnecessary waste.
So the thinking is, if you demand high performance from a deliberately smaller team, you minimize all that internal friction and you force focused execution.
That's the idea. The question he poses is, if you can build a billion-dollar company with 10 fewer people, why wouldn't you?
But my first thought is, doesn't that just lead to burnout? That sounds like a recipe for high beta volatility just waiting to happen in your human system.
And that is the tension. He justifies it using this high alpha, low beta framework, which he pulls from finance.
Okay, break that down.
Sure. So alpha measures outsized returns, your impact relative to the market. Beta measures volatility. MacInnis applies this to people and processes.
So he's looking for
He's seeking high alpha, so big impact, with low beta, which means reliability and low internal volatility.
So how does that translate into day-to-day management? What does that actually look like?
It demands what he calls relentless discomfort.
Relentless discomfort. Sounds fun.
Right. For instance, if you withhold painful but necessary feedback to avoid a confrontation, he considers that selfish.
Selfish.
Yes, because you're preserving your own comfort at the expense of the team's high alpha performance. Management's job is to ensure that performance is reliable and impactful, even if it requires difficult conversations and brutally high standards.
That relentless focus on eliminating organizational bloat, it finds a perfect parallel in radical engineering.
It really does.
Let's move from MacInnis's war on staffing bloat to Elon Musk's war on physical parts, which was highlighted by At the Captain Eli.
The connection is that simplicity mantra. It's the same core idea. Musk's internal rule for engineers is iconic.
I love this rule.
You get 2 points for deleting a line of code, but only 1 point for adding one.
It's a behavioral mechanism. It's designed to reward subtraction and simplification, not just tacking on more features.
Exactly, not incremental feature bloat.
And we see the direct translation of that rule into manufacturing with Tesla's mega castings.
Right, consolidating dozens and dozens of stamped metal parts into one massive rear underbody piece.
And the results?
They speak for themselves. This one change, this consolidation, eliminated 300 robots from the assembly line.
300.
And it shrunk the factory footprint by 40%. The stats back this up, too. Studies show that reducing your component count by just 20% can cut assembly defects by 35%.
That reduction in complexity is their core manufacturing edge in the EV race. It's everything.
It is.
And that simplicity, eventually, it flows down to empower the user. A point that at BLKMDL3 illustrated perfectly with the Tesla service mode feature.
This is such a radical departure from traditional auto practices. Service mode is a free, incredibly sophisticated diagnostic tool right there in the car.
And what does it show you?
It shows detailed 3D models, wiring harness layouts, even connector pinouts. Legacy automakers, they guard this information. They sell expensive, restricted workshop manuals.
Right, they want you to go to the dealer.
Of course. Tesla's transparency, on the other hand, fosters this whole community-driven maintenance ecosystem and fundamentally empowers the owner to self-diagnose.
Speaking of empowerment, we should touch on the societal dimension of full self-driving, FSD, which was promoted by at Tesla Economics, specifically for elderly drivers.
The context here is really critical. Drivers over 65 account for, I think it's 13.7% of fatal U.S. crashes.
Which is disproportionately high.
Very high compared to their percentage of licensed drivers. So FSD is viewed not just as a convenience, but as a genuine mobility tool.
To mitigate that higher per-mile crash risk.
Exactly. Restoring independence, extending the driving life for people who might otherwise be forced off the road.
Before we move on, there's a quick historical footnote from at IMZMX that is just too rich to ignore.
Ah, yes, the name.
The initial acquisition of the name Tesla Motors, a multi-trillion-dollar asset today, Cost Elon Musk just $75,000.
From a resident in Sacramento, it's the ultimate high alpha acquisition, right? Minimal investment, practically infinite return.
A perfect encapsulation of finding leverage in the most unexpected places.
And that quest for leverage, for fundamental change, that leads us right to the bleeding edge of human and machine integration.
We turn now to Neuralink, specifically the update on the blindsight implant shared by at Marion Moffel.
Right, so Neuralink received an FDA breakthrough device designation in late 2024 for blindsight.
And that designation, it basically fast-tracks the regulatory review for human trials.
It does, and the goal is audacious: to restore vision by bypassing damaged eyes entirely and stimulating the visual cortex directly.
They're essentially rewiring the hardware of human perception.
That's the plan.
That kind of ambition, it naturally raises some profound philosophical questions, especially about the future applications.
Enhanced sight.
Enhanced sight. Vision that could potentially exceed natural human capability. I mean, if you can interface directly with a visual cortex, you're not just restoring anymore, you are upgrading.
Exactly. And when we start talking about engineering the brain, we have to talk about intelligence itself. Which brings us to physicist Brian Cox's view on consciousness, shared by @SlowDeveloper.
Okay, so what's his central claim on consciousness?
Cox argues it's a weakly emergent phenomenon. Meaning it is fully governed by the underlying physical laws of the universe and the brain's processes. So if it's strictly physical, a sufficiently powerful computer could, in principle, simulate the structure of the brain.
And thus simulate consciousness.
It's the ultimate reductionist view. Consciousness as computational feasibility.
But the debate just splits sharply right there, doesn't it? Does simulation equal true experience?
It absolutely doesn't, according to the critics. People who draw on ideas like panpsychism.
Panpsychism, the idea that consciousness is a fundamental part of reality itself.
Right. Maybe even pre-physical. They'd suggest that while an AGI might achieve this incredibly sophisticated mimicry of human sentience, it may never achieve true, subjective, experiential awareness.
The line between engineering intelligence and replicating spirit, that remains the highest hurdle.
It does.
Moving from neurohardware back to clever digital user experience, a different kind of intelligence. Let's look at UX design. The post from @SheerShilky1 gave us some great tech nostalgia about Apple's most recent major UI innovation.
They revisited the iPhone 14 Pro's dynamic island reveal in 2022. And the genius there wasn't the pill-shaped cutout. Leaks had already revealed that.
Everyone knew that was coming.
Right. The surprise was the fluid, interactive animation that transformed a hardware limitation, the camera housing, into an engaging, living feature.
It took something that had to be there and flipped it into a design asset.
A total asset.
I remember the excitement. That interactive animation turned dead space into this dynamic notification hub. It was peak industrial design, making a hardware constraint feel flexible.
It was a masterclass in UI design, but, it's also a lesson in product decay. Later iOS 17 and 18 updates introduced glitches and slightly diminished that original seamless polish.
Which reminds us that constant software iteration, if it's not rigorously managed, can lead to the very bloat and complexity that great design seeks to eliminate in the first place.
It's the same cycle all over again.
And that cycle of complexity and simplification, it continues in the digital creative world, where indie developers are constantly finding novel workarounds. We saw that ingenuity in the 3D art ecosystem.
Yeah, we saw some fantastic stylized work from Agora Pico, showcasing these anime-inspired fire effects created in Blender 5.0.
What's important for non-artists to understand there is the tool he used, Eevee rendering.
Right. Eevee is a real-time render engine. You get instantaneous feedback, which means artists can iterate really quickly on complex processes like displacement modifiers and shader nodes to get that intricate, stylized look without, waiting hours for a final render.
And the complexity of building environments is just as intense. Take that 10-day time-lapse from @VisualSalmon. He created this incredibly detailed, lo-fi, cyberpunk noir Shinjuku metro scene.
And that scene required a whole suite of procedural tools, like geometry nodes, just to handle tedious things like scattering vegetation, particle simulations for rain and atmosphere. It just shows you the high cost of achieving that cinematic detail.
But on the pure development side, there's a wonderful simplicity hack from @MJ the Hunter that's worth highlighting.
This is developer intelligence at its best. He's using a particle system with zero gravity to visualize a character's trajectory in a 2D platformer.
It's like painting the path of the player.
That's exactly it. It's a non-intrusive velocity visualizer for debugging momentum, jump arcs, and physics, all without cluttering the screen with lines and numbers. A small hack with a massive impact on quality assurance.
It simplifies a really complex testing problem.
Mm.
Finally, let's wrap up with a look at global affairs and tech nostalgia, which brings us back to that balance between narrative and reality. We saw at Narendra Modi's Man Ki Baat's broadcast.
His reflection on India's 2025 collective achievements.
The year-end summary was highly celebratory. It covered major national accomplishments like the ICC cricket victory, Operation Sindoor anti-terror strikes, the Gaganyaan space mission,
And the Ram Temple inauguration. But the reactions are, as you'd predict, sharply partisan. While there is genuine national pride, there are simultaneous criticisms about economic progress.
So what's the impartial context there?
The IMF data pegged 2025 growth at 6.5%, which, while strong globally, is still actually below India's pre-pandemic averages. It just highlights that constant tension between political rhetoric, focus on achievement, and the ground-level economic reality.
We end this deep dive by returning to the consumer experience, looking at the roots of service innovation. At Zero Hasmed Suri shared that great clip of Steve Jobs introducing the Genius Bar.
Like in 2001.
2001. And this was a genuine disruption in retail service.
Oh, absolutely. Jobs pitched it as blending deep technical expertise with a casual, non-threatening atmosphere. It completely overturned the traditional guarded repair model where the customer, feels powerless.
And it was a core part of why those first Apple stores were so profitable so quickly. They were averaging an unheard of $1,800 per square foot annually by 2003.
And the listener sentiment in that thread tells the story. It's nostalgia for that original vision of dedicated, empathetic support.
Contrasting sharply with modern Apple stores that are often perceived as focusing more heavily on product displays and upselling than on dedicated genius service.
It's a reminder that intentional simplicity and quality of service are fragile. You have to actively maintain them.
We've covered a remarkable tension today, from $5 trillion flowing untracked in institutional complexity,
To the intense focus on intentional simplicity driving companies like Tesla and the management philosophies of Chamath and Rippling.
the recurring theme is clear. The only way to beat complexity, whether it's bureaucratic, physical, or organizational, is through a brutal, data-driven commitment to subtraction.
And if the state won't commit to subtraction,
Private markets will step in to profit from the resulting chaos.
and that void is precisely where we expect the next major shift. Our prediction for tomorrow is this. Given the massive reported government fraud market of up to $521 billion and the lack of internal controls,
Venture capital is going to pour money into this space.
expect VCs to aggressively fund more startups like Anti-Fraud Co. They will effectively outsource the critical audit function of the state to private, incentivized whistleblowers who leverage AI and quit-tam law,
This is the future of government oversight.
or perhaps the monetization of its failure.
So we leave you with this thought to consider. If consciousness is merely a product of physical laws, as Brian Cox suggested, what is the moral and social imperative for innovation like Neuralink that fundamentally changes the physical rules of human perception?
If we can be upgraded, should we be?
It's something to ponder as you navigate the complexity of the world. Thank you for joining us.
We'll see you next time.